Ohio State will play Wisconsin on the road on Saturday at 7:30 under the lights inside Camp Randall. It's time for our game time decisions. Andrew, what's something that intrigued you about this game on Saturday? Something you're going to be watching that's going to be a big factor in the game on Saturday.
How Ohio State defends the run. I think that this is really going to be where the game starts and ends for Wisconsin. If Braylon Allen can get moving a little bit, I think that is really going to impact the game. Not just how Ohio State's going to play defense or how Wisconsin's going to play offense, but I think it also impacts how Ohio State might have to play offense. We saw at the end of that Notre Dame game when Notre Dame started to really run the ball, where they have like a 96-yard drive for a touchdown or something like that. They had like a 70-yard drive for a touchdown in the second half. They ran the ball really effectively in that second half, and it really limits possessions. We've already talked about that ad nauseum, but it limits possessions. It limits how the game is played. And I think that, when you talk about a game like this, that's got to be Wisconsin's plan. So if Braylon Allen can run the ball, like if that offensive line can get a push on Ohio State's defensive line, I think that we could be in store for a closer game than maybe a lot of people think. I think that the defensive line holding up against the run pretty well sinks Wisconsin's chances. Like they're not going to go out there and throw it all over the yard and beat Ohio State. I just don't think that that's going to happen. Plus, you're kind of playing into one of the strengths of Ohio State's defense right there. If you have, especially if you have like a Denzel Burke back, if you have to throw into that type of secondary, that's going to be a problem. So if Wisconsin can run the ball, I think that is going to be a real big impact on the game. And if they can't, I think we could be in store for a blowout. So that's what I'm going to be watching for. How does Ohio State's front four match up against a really big, really long, and really physical Wisconsin offensive line? And what does that mean for the run game for the Badgers?
Braylon Allen, 704 yards and 8 touchdowns on 120 carries. It's 5.9 yards per carry versus Ohio State only allowing 3.01 yards per carry. There is a very good chance that that's going to be a game-deciding thing there. Is what wins out there. Braylon Allen's dominance in the run game or Ohio State stopping the run. Nathan, just something you're interested in. What's a key thing for this game on Saturday?
Well, I want to talk about the other run game because I want to start to get a better sense of what Ohio State's running identity is this year. They say Trevion Henderson is back. They say he's a full go in practice this week. Ryan Day does. So it looks like the first time in 3 weeks we'll see him. Who's the second back that gets carries in this game? Is it still Chip Trayanum and Mayan Williams, some combination of that? Do they actually give Dallin Hayden the ball in a real way in a game like this, as Ryan Day earlier this week sort of vaguely predicted that they would, with some interesting terminology that he was using about how we're going to push it this week in practice and try to get him. So you're trying to push him to where you can trust him to then in all facets so that you can put him in the game, I guess is what he was saying. So I just want to come out of this with a better sense of what the hierarchy is there and what that means going forward, but also just to start to see an improvement. Like they've got to start finding some way to consistently run the ball. And I know that Penn State has a really tough front. I understand. And that was going to be a tough team to run the ball against. And you had a lot of carries, if you're Ohio State, in that game that were only going 2, 1, 0 yards. But you had the same thing a couple weeks earlier against Maryland. Like that's more the trend for this team than what they did at Purdue, where they kind of ran it more consistently. They've got to find a way to, even when you're playing a solid front, to be getting 3 or 4 yards a carry instead of 0, 1, or 2. Like they still just have too many of those carries mingled in. And I don't care how good you are as a passing team. I don't care how many Marvin Harrison Juniors you have on the field. Actually, if you had like 2 or 3, I guess then it probably wouldn't matter. But you've only got one. And yeah, he's great, but there's only so much you can actually do with that when you're just constantly in second and third and long. You've got to start flipping more of those against good teams. And this is maybe the last team of a certain caliber that I think they're going to play. I don't want to disrespect what Rutgers has done already. Minnesota is typically a pretty well-coached team. And who else you got in the middle there? Michigan State. Well, things are in trouble at Michigan State right now. But this is the last time I think they're going to face the combination of like this environment, this level of team, this level of coaching, like all of it kind of coming together until Michigan. So this would be a good week to start something new going and start to build real momentum for the running game that you're going to have in Ann Arbor.
Wisconsin, middle of the road stop in the run team, allowing 4.05 yards per carry. That's 67th in the country. I think that's an interesting one because Ohio State hasn't been great at running the ball, but Wisconsin's not great at stopping it. And so is this a chance for the run game to get going, especially if you're expecting Travion Henderson to be back, who right now has only 44 carries on the season, hasn't played in 4 weeks, but he's still leading this team in yards and touchdowns right now, even though Chip Trayanum and Mayan Williams have played in more games and have had the ball and more opportunities so far this year. Mine is a little bit more just play calling with Ryan Day. Ryan Day expects to have a not full. He made it a point to not say it's going to be full, but he's expecting to get some of his weapons back, and that includes Emeka Egbuka, who on the year, just because he hasn't played as much, 22 catches for 303 yards and 3 touchdowns. He and Marvin Harrison Jr. both had 1,000 yards last year, and there was no reason to think that they both wouldn't be on that trajectory this year. Marvin is clearly there. He only needs about 250 yards to get it, and I thought Emeka was on that pace too before he went down to an injury. For a guy who hasn't played in 2 weeks now, does Ryan Day try to get Emeka Egbuka involved early, especially if he thinks, okay, Wisconsin's going to try to take away Marvin Harrison Jr., but that's still Marvin Harrison Jr., and yes, you run plays for him, but there's just as much creativity that you can have for a guy like Emeka Egbuka who hasn't played in 2 weeks. Do you try to get him going and get him in a rhythm? Because you don't necessarily need him to be awesome to beat Wisconsin or really to win the next couple of games, but you are going to need him if that Ohio against Michigan, where you're going to need all your weapons to be at your best. So does Ryan Day try to get Emeka Egbuka going early or at some point in this game where Emeka ends the game with like 13 targets where he catches 9 of them for 125 yards and a touchdown or 2 just because they want to get him going back in the mix. I don't know if it's important for that to happen for them to win, but it is important for that to happen just for the long-term trajectory of where this team can go. Those are our game time decisions. Nathan and Andrew will be in the building to watch Ohio State play Wisconsin. Get the text 614-350-3315. All information going to your phone first before anywhere else. 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. And get Buckeye Talk wherever you listen to podcasts.